There has been some form of planning and zoning that dates back, would you like to take a guess, how long in the United States?
As far as the United States has existed,
Well,
I would
that's
guess.
correct. It actually started in the 1600s in St. Augustine, Florida, and they had a grid layout of land use and blocks and things. The thing they didn't have, though, during that time was protection for landowners. Now, planning and zoning has to comply with the First, Fifth, and 14th Amendments specifically. The First Amendment being signs, free speech, things like that. The Fifth and 14th Amendments. The Fifth is the taking of land without due compensation. So, if a city wants to take your land to build a street, they have to compensate you for it. And then the 14th Amendment is about equality. It has to be applied fairly. So those are kind of the basics. There's a lot more involved in that. A lot of people are not aware that our planning and zoning commissioners, which we have 7 on the planning and zoning board, are required to have 8 hours of continuing education every 2 years. I, as the planning and zoning administrator, had to have 16 hours of continuing education in planning and zoning laws, updates, things like that. So it's something that communities take serious. And the overall purpose of it is the big picture of the community. We have to develop a comprehensive plan for the city. Comprehensive plan, so it makes sense, maybe everybody understand it. It is the city's crystal ball. We have to try to predict what's happening in the future. So say we have a land use area where there's a lot of business development going on, but we have an adjoining parcels of property for a mile or so that say is more residential. Well, we have to try to predict where the growth is going to be and to provide essential services. Every 5 years we are required to update our comprehensive plan, which means we're looking at that constantly, looking at that crystal ball, trying to figure out what's going on, where the growth areas are, what type of needs there are. The comprehensive plan is very complicated. We can just about tell you every soil sample, wherever type of soil is within the city limits, wherever sinkhole is, things like that. It's very detailed, costs a lot of money. We'll spend between $15,000 and $20,000 to update that comprehensive plan. So it's very serious business. I've been on Planning and Zoning Commission since the mid-90s. It's a continuing process of growing. The main thing, though, is that probably your listeners would like to get into is, well, when do I have to have a permit? Okay, well, anytime you build anything, you have to have a permit from the city. You have to give us kind of a detailed drawing of what you want to build, the dimensions of it, where it's sitting in relationship to the property lines, things like that, and the size. So if you want to build, add on to your house, build a new building, build a privacy fence, build a deck, dog houses over 14 square feet, things like that.
Wow, really?
You have to have a building permit.
Huh. And, you mentioned something earlier, and as a property owner, it is hard to accept that we can't just do what we want with our own property. I mean, we paid for that, and we pay the taxes on it every year. So it's hard to, like you said, people say, well, it's my property. I can't just do what I want with it. And no, we can't. And so tell me what the purpose of that is. Why are these rules in place to begin with?
Well, like I said, the primary function there is to protect you from your neighbor. Likewise, to protect your neighbor from you. So the city has the right to establish certain guidelines what can be built in different districts. We have residential districts, 3 different forms of that. We have business districts, 3 different forms of that. We have industrial districts, 2 different forms of that. Even have some agricultural districts within the city limits, which we do not have any, but we do have that legislation in place should there be some agricultural needs within the city.
Such as?
Well, say like the experiment farm out there, for instance. Basically, they are in an industrial district, but that's just because the application of the zoning at the time, the agriculture wasn't included. So as part of our comp plan, we say, we might need, say, for instance, to put the research center in an ag district. So, and of course, within each district, there's different rules and regulations applies. R1, what we call R1 is single-family dwellings, has the most restrictive regulations on it, like setback guidelines. Everything must be like nothing can be built within 8 foot of a side property line, 25 foot of a front property line, 20 foot off of a rear property line. So you want to place a storage building on your property, okay? You need to check with City Hall and find out what the regulations are. Get a building permit, and of course, if we will tell you all that information there. R2, for instance, has a different set of guidelines, which that's double family dwellings. R3 is apartment houses, triple family dwellings, triplexes, things like that. They have a different set. Business regulations, whether it's a neighborhood business district, a downtown business district, or a central highway like 62 West here, they have different regulations. Of course, the industrial, I-1 and I-2, have different regulations. So whenever you're going to build, you need guidance on it, you need to call us at City Hall, come by and sit down and talk with us. We'll be glad to show you the ordinances that pertain to planning and zoning. Our ordinances are derived from Kentucky's ordinances. The state of Kentucky, KRS Chapter 100 is our Bible. We virtually just duplicate what the KRS statutes say are required. KRS says this is the minimum guidelines. You can establish tougher guidelines, but these are the minimum. So whenever you're complying with city ordinances, you're also complying with state ordinances.
Okay, and so you and the city of Princeton has chosen to just stick with the minimum.
Yes, okay. We do. There may be certain exceptions where we may change more footage or something like that due to the needs of particular properties and what the Planning Commission views as that need. Sign regulations, for instance, the state will set a minimum, and sign regulations went through a heavy burden here back in 2015 in the Supreme Court ruling called Reed versus Gilbert, Arizona, which virtually limited cities' extreme limits on regulating content. So virtually what cities can do is under the Supreme Court ruling, we can regulate the size of the sign and the placement of the sign, but the content, such as political signs, things like that, cannot be regulated.
Okay, that's interesting. So do we have a resource online that we can go to if we have questions about zoning and planning laws, or do we have to come to City Hall and sit down and talk to somebody?
Need to call me at City Hall. I issue the building permits, answer the questions. We are in the process of trying to develop the website to have our ordinances put online. So, but a lot of time, even with the ordinances online, they are kind of complicated. People may not know where to look, for instance, in particular for a particular ordinance. So best thing they can do is call us. We always welcome phone calls, questions about it.
All right. What's the best number to call?
270-365-9575. That's City Hall, and you can ask to speak to me or the Planning, Zoning, Code Enforcement Department, whatever it might be.
All right, Dickie, anything else you want to add to this? Tell us about planning and zoning today.
Well, yes, I encourage everybody, before you build and start on a project, be sure and call City Hall to find out if you need anything, and if you do, what you need, rather than having me show up and issue a violation. When we talk about zoning laws, There's actually three aspects of it it can fall under. One is under KRS statutes, like I said, which is a violation of KRS statutes. Then a city ordinance violation, which is a district court action, or it can fall under my code enforcement department, which is a civil citation. So it depends how it is applied. Generally, we just want compliance. We want people to do things as the ordinance states. There's a lot to it. There's other things. Let's say, for instance, you have a piece of property. The setback guideline, you want to put your storage building in. You can't put it within 20 foot of the back lot line, and you need a variance. Well, we have another division of planning and zoning called the Board of Adjustments, and they hear conditional use permits and variances. A variance is exactly what it says it is. It's a variance from a dimensional measurement. So say, if I put it that close, it's going to be right in the back door of my house. So you can apply to the Board of Adjustments to ask for a dimensional variance. You have to make your case. You have to come in, give us a drawing, what it's about. We will sit up on that. Certain aspects of planning and zoning commissions, whenever you want, say, somebody wants to start a home-based business or a business within a residential district. Well, the ordinance might say it is allowed, but you have to have a conditional use permit. In residential districts, I have found no legislation that would allow an inventory stocking retail business within a residential district. They do allow things like doctor's office, lawyer's office, insurance agents, travel agents, things like that, but only with a conditional use permit. So you would have to apply to the Board of Adjustments, tell them what you're going to be doing, because residential districts is to try to keep them residential. The total purpose is keep the traffic out of them, keep them residential,
Okay. All right, Dickie. Well, I appreciate your time. I know we could probably go on for quite a while about this topic, yes, and we'll have to revisit it, at a later date. But thank you so much for coming in this morning. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I appreciate it. You always come in with such great information, so I really appreciate you doing that for us.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, Dickie Thomas. He is your Caldwell County Planning and Zoning information source.